You know, it's funny about podcasting too. I prepare harder for, and of course you know all about it, but it's like you prepare harder for these than I ever did for being on the air. And I probably shouldn't say that out loud, but my God, I mean, it's a lot of work.
They go deeper.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a product of there's just no interruptions. It's a deeper conversation because there's no. I mean, you know how it is. You get into a segment, you set things up, you get the guest on, you ask a question, they talk for a while, you interrupt, and then it's like a commercial break, and then you're sitting there for 10 minutes waiting so you can ask another question, and this just isn't like that. I like it. I mean, no, not to. Radio is what it is. It's a business. You got to make money, but I mean, just for the actual art of it, I guess. Yeah. I like podcasting. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as an old radio guy, there's parts of this that I really, really like. I do like that. I like not being interrupted. I like that you and I can sit down and we can get done in 45 minutes, which would take us 90 minutes if we were going to do this on the radio. It would take us. It would just take us longer because we have boxes we have to check. But radio. And again, this my bias shining through. I mean, my wife will tell you, radio's been my mistress since she's known me. And sometimes I spend more time with my mistress than I do with my wife, and that's where the fight starts. Of course.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the writing part of it. I mean, I've always enjoyed. I enjoyed it when I was on talk radio, and I enjoyed getting calls and. When you got a hot topic and the calls are rolling in, and that's some heady stuff. But writing's my first love, and for me that's ultimately what. I apologize, by the way. I got a cold, so I'm fighting a little bit.
I have it too. I think it's going around the state. I don't think it's just a particular city or a particular building. I think it's going around all over the place. Okay, so Rob Port, guest, alumnus, podcast guy, Forum Communications on the Jarrod Thomas Show. Just for a little historical contest, I think, Rob, we've been friends, media acquaintances.
Yeah.
I'd say for a couple of decades we've known each other, and we don't reach out enough, of course, because whoever does, but you're busy, I'm busy, I know there's all the things. But Rob is a guy that I've always, going back to the Say Anything blog, I've always respected your ability to write, your ability to take a subject and truncate it so that we can get what we need from it. I think most people, even some that might view or listen to this podcast, would say, I haven't always agreed with that guy. But let's, if we can, just to sort of set the stage a little bit. If you could, did you set out to be a columnist? Did you set that? Was that a goal of yours at some point in your life, or how'd you get here?
I fell over ass backwards into it is what happened. And first of all, I apologize for people listening. My voice is a little raspy. I've got that nice fall flu or cold or something. But, basically I started a blog shortly after 9/11. We had invaded Afghanistan. We were on our way to war in Iraq. I was a 20-something, early 20s guy, and was trying to figure out the world a little bit and process how I felt about these things. And blogging was the hot new medium. I started a Blogspot blog. I don't even know if Blogspot's still around. Later it would be owned by Google. I don't know if it's still around or not. But, I started a blog and just started writing. And several years into it, I think it was the 2004 election cycle, I really wanted to start focusing on North Dakota because up to that point, I'd been writing about a lot of national stuff. And the way I looked at it, there's already 1 million people covering national politics. I didn't think they needed it. I started thinking, well, what I can provide is what a lot of the new media people are doing nationally. I can do that in North Dakota, where there's basically nobody else doing it. And so I had reached out to who would later become my good friend, Jason Sturrock from the North Dakota Republican Party. He was the executive director at the time. And they were going to be having their state convention in Minot, which is where I live. And I said, can I come? I mean, I said, I know I'm not media, but do I need credentials? Can I just come and observe? And he told me, what do you mean? Of course you're the media. I'll get you credentials right away. Everybody reads your blog. We all love it. And I thought, holy crap, people are reading this stuff. And it kind of spiraled from there. And I will tell you, I mean, there was a point, and I don't know, like, I don't know that I can pinpoint it on the timeline, but there did come a time where I realized I could make a go of this. And at that point, yeah, being a columnist, I mean, this job I have now where, you know, I work for a really wonderful company that, you know, gives me a lot of latitude and a lot of freedom and a lot of resources to do good work. And a statewide audience. I've built what I feel is a pretty good reputation. Mm-hmm. I get to a lot of good stories. I have a lot of good contacts, and I try to use that to tell the truth. And you're right. People say all the time, well, because I hear it too. People, particularly when they want to praise something I write, they have to put the disclaimer on it. Well, you know, I don't always agree with everything you write. But this one, you know, like a blind squirrel in a forest, you managed to find the nut with this one, Port. Good job. And, you know, and my reaction to that is, I'm not trying to get everybody to agree with me. That's not democracy. That's not how a free society works. The debate is eternal. You know, because from issue to issue, year to year, we're going to disagree. You know, democracy is not for building consensus. Democracy is for finding a way for us to live with one another without, you know, resorting to violence or guns or oppression or those other things. You know, so that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking for people to agree with me. My goal, it's a W for me. If somebody reaches the end of one of my columns and they feel like they understand the issue better than they did going in, or maybe they just got some new information. Maybe I made an open records request, or I got a quote or something like that just helped illuminate the issue a little bit more for them. Now, if on top of that, if I've changed their mind and now they agree with me, well, then that's a cherry on top. But at the end of the column, if they feel more informed, better informed than they were before, then, you know, I've done my job.
So has there been any, and I'm guessing at this point, the skin is so thick, you're basically an armadillo. People reach out and they're, you know, if I ever see you, I mean, do you get that kind of stuff even now?
Like, yeah, I mean, you know, a few years ago we had some pretty serious threats. You know, I wrote about it a little bit. You know, it was actually a group of white supremacists in Fargo. I had written something about the Jupiter Paulson case that was going on where a black man, I think he was from like Libya. I don't know where he was from. He's an immigrant, basically. I don't remember all the specifics, but, you know, he murdered a young girl, and her father was obviously, you know, devastated by this. And you saw some white supremacists sort of creeping in and taking advantage of the situation. And I wrote something about how, you know, we often ask ourselves, how did people get this way where they hate somebody just because of their race or they believe awful things? And I think sometimes it comes from a place that maybe we can empathize with, where it comes from a place of real legitimate pain. And then it twists into, anyway, that was the point of my column. The white supremacist group, I feel like I hit maybe the nail on the head. And they started circulating my home address, the address of my daughter's employer and stuff like that. We had to get security cameras at the house. Now, that's an extreme example. That's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Most of it's just mean things. You know, people write in and tell me that I'm fat and,
thanks.
You
I
know,
missed all the
stupid.
mirrors this morning. I had no idea. You know, that's always when they say stuff like that to me. I'm like, you're fat and I'm ugly.
I'm always happy when they could take time away from their underwear modeling career to comment about how I look. Because I'm sure they're very busy with Victoria's Secret or Calvin Klein or whatever, making ads.
It's good.
So, yeah, I mean, you get stuff like that. And the thing is, it's more so. You know, we used to joke all the time that, remember when we used to think that an anonymity on the internet was the problem? Like it was anonymous comments. Look at Facebook. Yeah. Do you think anybody gives a rip about anonymity at this point?
No.
I mean, they're posting it right under their own names. And that's a product of the time where we have just accepted a coarser brand of politics. And now, I don't know what the solution is, but, you know, I've learned to just not care that somebody thinks I'm fat and stupid and ugly. If they're saying those things, I've probably hit pretty close to the mark.
Well, I've got some specific things I'm going to ask Rob about here as we go along. Some of them are statewide issues. Some are things about Rob's political leanings, which I'm curious if they've changed a little through the years. So we'll get to some of these crumbs. But you came up in the business, if you will, accidentally or otherwise, as social media was doing this. And there was an adjustment for all of us. I've been in radio or some sort of communication business since 1993. And as you mentioned, you started your blog right around 9/11, somewhere in that vicinity. Really, as social media was taking off.
September 2002, almost a year to the day after 9/11.
So, I mean, again, can happily say, or at least you can say, maybe not happily, been doing this a minute now. The social media, does it enhance or does it detract from the product and or the conversation?
I mean, I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think it can do both. I could tell you I have had some very wonderful discussions on social media at times. And it's kind of nice when it'll happen on like a comment thread or something that's not getting, it seems like that's when it happens, when it's just like for somehow on the internet, like you and maybe just one or two other people have found some quiet time and you have an interesting exchange, and for some reason the trolls are leaving you alone. I think that's good. Obviously there's the other side of it where, that old saw about how both the best and the worst thing of the First Amendment is that everybody gets a say. There's some truth to that. Social media, I think, has kind of turned everybody into a talk radio host.
Sure.
But the problem is not everybody has the talent or the scruples or the ethics to be a talk radio host or a streamer or in media. I mean, so everybody's reporting things, and also I think what social media has created is a need. People feel like they have to weigh in on things. So I think that's why sometimes, like, maybe nothing's exciting is happening, and so randomly some kid gets suspended for a t-shirt that has a political slogan on it in Georgia, and people in North Dakota are wrapped around the axle about it. Why do you care? It's not your school district, it's not your state. But I don't know. I mean, it's a conflict. We live in such prosperous times. I don't think we give that enough credit. I mean, we live in a time, and I don't want to diminish the struggles that people have. And obviously we just came through a pretty hard time with SNAP and everything. But we live in a society where the indigent probably have more to fear from obesity than they do from starvation. We are living in an abundant time. Just a couple, my grandmother could remember her father farming with horses. I mean, that's how quickly we've come. We have a lot of free time on our hands, and we have this powerful venue where we can indulge all the navel gazing that we want, and it's just not very healthy. I think really what we need is a readjustment, and again, saying this as somebody who probably owes their career to digital media, I think sometimes we could probably adjust our priorities a little bit and come to realize that the Facebook comments from the randos on the internet maybe don't matter that much.
Which might be a pretty decent segue into kind of what I've prepared for us today, Rob.
All right.
The mayor of Fargo,
yeah,
Mr. Mahoney, made the announcement about turning not broadcasting public comments anymore during meetings. Yeah. I thought that was pretty thin-skinned. I thought it was a tinge of arrogance, maybe more than a tinge. I thought that there was, it seemed like we're trying to take the power from the people, and we're gonna sort of let you see what we want you to see, and that might be bloviating a bit. Mayor Mahoney went on to explain that, well, this is more about, the 4 or 5 people that might show up in a year that might want to, yell at them for their property taxes and tell them how stupid they are. I'm not here to say that doesn't happen, and I'm not here to say it doesn't happen more frequently than 4 or 5 times a year. What I am trying to say, though, is that dangerous, or did you think that it was okay? And by the way, I have read your column on it, so I kind of have an idea of how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to overstate the case and make it sound like this is like the end of democracy as we know it or something, because up until just recently, North Dakota didn't have any requirement that we ever allow public comment at meetings. And I do wonder how important it is now that everybody can weigh in on Facebook and Twitter. I mean, we have more capacity to make our voices heard than ever before. Are public comments at the meetings all that important? I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think they are, but it's not the end of the world. That being said, the way Fargo went about doing it and what they said, how they described the problem that they were supposedly trying to to resolve just didn't make any sense to me. Because I am sympathetic to the idea that yes, some people get up at these meetings and they go on off-topic rants, or sometimes in rare instances they're abusive. I know Dickinson not that long ago had a problem with somebody getting up and using racial slurs and saying, really ugly stuff. And the city of Dickinson really struggled with it because on one hand, they wanted an open venue. On the other hand, they wanted this one guy to stop showing up and using that venue to air, all the ugly things he had to say about Jewish people and women and everything else. So, I'm sympathetic to that. Now, that being said, the law that was just passed by the legislature earlier this year does mandate that every public meeting in the state of North Dakota has to have a public comment section. But it also laid down in the law some very explicit authority that these local governments have to moderate those speeches. And I think it makes perfect sense. It can't be disruptive. It can't disrupt the meeting. It can't be abusive or harassing or illegal, meaning you can't get up and slander somebody. And also, it has to be, they can limit it to being on topic. So they could say, you can't get up and talk about what President Trump did. If this meeting is about, sidewalks, then your comments have to be about sidewalks. Things like that. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Yeah. Now, the city of Fargo has that authority. And if they're concerned about, and this is how the mayor defended the position, they're worried about, people being abusive to city staff. Well, under existing state law, you could just turn the mic off and get that person out and say, no, if you're going to abuse city staff and just call them names or say just derogatory things and you're not having construct, they already have the authority to do that. So ending the broadcast doesn't fix that. You're still going to have the comments. They're still going to be there. And if they're being abusive and you're just letting them, turning off the cameras isn't even the solution to that problem, particularly when the law spells out a real solution where you could just stop them from talking. So I have a feeling something else was going on. The city of Fargo is under a lot of heat. They're trying to annex this AI data center that's being built, and the data center company doesn't want it, and the people that own the land don't want it. And the city of Harwood that does, basically it's in Harwood. The city of Harwood opposes it, but Fargo needs revenues. And so Fargo is going after it. And so I think it's less about abusive comments than the fact that, there's probably some members of the public that were righteously given the city of Fargo the business. And I think they just didn't want as many eyeballs on that.
So I guess McFeely wrote a column, and I guess maybe I shouldn't assume. I'm guessing you sometimes check out his work, and he took, which doesn't surprise, or shouldn't surprise anybody really that pays attention, that he took a slightly different take on it, saying, well, really, it's not a big deal because the comments will go straight to video. So in other words, you won't be able to see them at the meeting if you're watching it on the internet someplace, but they will be at the video, straight to video afterwards. And to me, that seems like, like you said, it's not the end of democracy as we know it by any stretch. All that is.
But why? True. I guess if it's going to be on the video anyway,
right?
And if the problem again is that people are being off topic or they're being harassing or abusive, you didn't solve that problem at all. You just made it so that fewer people saw it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And again, I'm not trying to make Watergate out of this. But it is part of I think a longer term trend of Fargo acting sort of arrogantly.
Well, we saw it a little bit when Fufeng was trying to come to Grand Forks, and we had a lot of citizens that were angry that showed up.
Yeah,
frankly, and this I don't normally, but they were pissed off. They were like, China is coming to Grand Forks, and you knuckleheads don't see it type. But they were using much stronger language. In fact, at one point, a citizen challenges our mayor to a fight.
Yeah, that was actually Jarrod Gorick, who was the head of the Sons of Liberty of North Dakota from Tioga. I followed that story closely, and that's hard because on one hand, ultimately that side of the debate was proved right. Mm-hmm. The military came out and said we have some genuine concerns, and obviously I think that opens up the idea that we need a better process where if there's a legitimate concern, we need a way to get those concerns from the military to the local government people, because how in the world could the city of Grand Forks evaluate national security threats? I mean, that's absurd to expect the city of Grand Forks, a local government, to do that. On the other hand, if you're talking about specifically the public comment period, just because you're fired up about an issue or you're upset does not give you license to be abusive to people. And many of those comments were abusive. I would say some cross the line into not just disdain for China's authoritarian communist government, which I share that disdain,
Sure.
but for like Chinese people, which I think was also, that certainly wasn't the majority, but it was there, and that was ugly. And I don't envy local governments having to sort of play referee on those sorts of comments. But, the only answer to that I have is democracy is messy. It's really hard. And sometimes it's very ugly. And I don't think it does any of us any good to try to hide it. You have to confront it.
I worry that good people, will not seek public office because they don't want to put up with some of the nonsense that they see or that gets highlighted in these weekly meetings.
Yeah. Well, and not just in local government. I mean, you look at the legislature. I mean, District 4, I mean, your neck of the woods, Grand Forks, in District 42, Emily O'Brien stepped down from her seat, created a vacancy, and the process for selecting a new person was absolutely brutal because there was a faction up there that wanted to win, and they didn't win, and so they set about making the guy, Dustin McNally, Representative McNally now, set out to make his life miserable, even up to the point of calling on him to resign from his newly appointed seat in the legislature because he used his University of North Dakota Outlook account to, I guess, write himself an outline for one of his speeches to receive the appointment, which, by the way, he shouldn't have done. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, come on. So it's just stuff like that. I share that concern, and not just elected officials either. You look at some of the volunteer, like county auditors and stuff, and have to oversee elections, and some of the nonsense that they're put through by people who believe conspiracy theories that the ballot machines aren't working or whatever. They have to weather that stuff. They don't get paid a lot of money. Most of them are pretty talented people that could probably get better jobs, better paying jobs doing something else. We're going to drive those people out of public service. And then who are we going to be left with?
Well, I think some of those people we're trying to keep out of meetings is the answer to that. And I mean, again, occasionally you get a guy or a gal that is on the fringe and that gets dealt with accordingly. There's rules in place for that too. But I just worry that we're so polarized that if you just don't agree with me, then I don't like you. I don't like all of you. And that to me is just, it's like, how do we get there? Which brings me to kind of my next topic. I'm just going to ask you blankly, or just hit you straight with it. How do you feel about President Donald Trump?
I'm surprised that you need to ask the question. I feel like I have not been ambiguous about this. Yes. I think he is a stain on the fabric of the republic. He is embarrassing. I'm a lifelong conservative and Republican, and it embarrasses me that he is associated with those movements. I think he is morally repugnant. I think he is an ethical, I don't know what, troglodyte. I mean, he's just not a good person. I don't think he cares about the United States of America. I think he cares about aggrandizing Donald Trump. And to the extent that we have, a problem, I don't think it's all Donald Trump's fault. I don't think it's Donald Trump's fault that we behave the way so many of Americans behave the way they do on social media. But I think he's exploited that. I think he's taken advantage of it. I think he's fanned the flames of it. I think he's worked hard to make it worse because it redounds to his benefit. So he's a terrible, terrible mistake that I think in the second term, we're going to be paying for it. I mean, that's the reality is when you elect bad leaders, you get bad leadership. And the problem is the Democrats haven't really been putting up anybody that, I mean, temperamentally is maybe an improvement, but I mean, the Democrats haven't exactly been covering themselves in glory either. They lost to the guy twice. So it's remarkable. And it really scares me what Donald Trump represents and what Americans are suddenly willing to tolerate because he happens to be on their team or on their side of an issue, it scares me. I mean, we're living in a world right now. I mean, the boundaries that he is pushing, using the military domestically, using law enforcement the way he does, just the expansion of executive power while Congress sits to the side. That's supposed to be a check and a balance on that power. Congress sits to the side and twiddles their thumbs. That is scary. And even for those of you who are listening to this who are Trump supporters and you think Trump could do no wrong and you trust him with all those powers, eventually we're going to elect another Democratic president. And I'm afraid that we have a president, Gavin Newsom, is he going to deploy? If we have another oil boom in North Dakota and crime goes up a little bit, is the National Guard going to be deployed to Watford City all of a sudden? Is that what we want as Americans? Because I don't. I don't want to go down that road. I don't want any president to have those powers.
So the psychology of it is what fascinates me. I guess, I'm not on the air with any regularity anymore. I've moved into management, so I do the pod, and then I'm going to do more writing. I like to write. I really do like to write. I don't know if it's more passion for me than being on the air is, but I guess we'll find out. But when I talk to people about it, I hear a couple of things that I'd like for you to respond to.
Sure.
The first is, and this is probably the more popular one that I hear, is we didn't elect a priest, we elected a president. As if to say that you can be morally bankrupt, you can be kind of a POS in all areas of your life, but so long as you put policies forward that I agree with, I'm willing to live with that. That's got to be a complete lowering of the bar. The second thing that I hear all the time is, well, I didn't have anybody to pick from. I had Trump, or I had, and the Democrats, as you pointed out, I mean, President Biden was cognitively deficient. I think that was very clear for those.
And so many Democrats around him lied about it too. Misled the American public about it.
Right. And so Kamala, and in the 11th hour, I mean, I think she did everything that she could, and she tried to carry the flag and all, and it just, so we end up with Trump. Where do we find better candidates? We're back into old white dudes leading the country. I mean, how do you reason all of that when you think about this with this topic? Is he the lesser of two evils, or would you have rather had 4 more years of Joe?
Yeah, I did not want 4 more years of Joe. I ended up voting for Kamala Harris, mostly because, I mean, the way I looked at it is she wasn't going to pardon people who tried to perpetrate a coup after the 2020 election. Donald Trump campaigned on pardoning the people who perpetrated January 6th. I thought that was completely wrong. I mean, at the very least, I thought she would only be a bad leader and not somebody who was going to use the power of the government to execute retribution on her political enemies and excuse crimes committed in her name. But what a low bar. What a low bar that's the reason. I don't know how Americans have to want something else. And I think, there's that line from Game of Thrones about how, being summer's children. And I think that's, most Americans today, I don't think understand real strife. We talk about hardships. We talk about, the 2008 housing collapse, the 9/11 attacks, wars in Iraq, war in Afghanistan. But it kind of pales compared to what previous generations went through. We have been living, in the post-World War II era in Pax Americana. And I think what it's done is it's convinced us that this is how it's always going to be. What we achieved here in America, the prosperity and the peace that we had, relative peace that we achieved, is somehow inviolable. And we can indulge our most inane political instincts. We can live for the now, and nothing will ever change. And we have forgotten, I think, that a lot of this needs to be maintained. So I look, just a complete unwillingness. And I think one of the problems, too, is we don't blame the voters enough. I talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it makes my co-host, Chad Oban, squirm every time, because he's like, why are you're not going to get anywhere blaming the people. But I do. I blame the voters. You're electing these people. I mean, for all our complaints about Congress, and Congress's approval number is -11 or whatever it is at the time. And then you look at the re-election rate in the United States House of Representatives, and it's consistently over 90%. Consistently. And that's not money in politics. That's not, maybe that's some of it, But at the end of the day, every 2 years, the American people could replace every single member of the House of Representatives, and they reelect 90% of them. They could replace a third of the United States Senate, and they reelect consistently over 85% of them. The voters deserve some blame. Nothing is going to change until the voters want something better. And I don't think the voters are going to really want change, like real change. Like we need to do some hard math on the budget and not run a $2 trillion budget deficit anymore until something wakes us up, something bad happens, and Americans feel real pain. I've clearly been thinking about this a lot. And actually what turned me on this is I saw a photograph of graffiti that an American soldier had written on a wall in Iraq. I think it was in Fallujah. And the graffiti said, "America's not at war. America's at the shopping mall." And that just seemed real to me because those wars did. Like Vietnam touched us, right? I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of Americans were drafted? My father was drafted to serve in Vietnam. You know, the world wars. I mean, those things touched us. The Depression touched us. Most Americans have been living fat and happy for a long time. And I don't think anything's going to change until something comes over the wall. We're living in Candyland, and until something ugly comes over the wall and invades Candyland, we're not going to do anything different.
Do you think healthcare is it? Do you think healthcare is that thing that gets us to pay attention? Because that's really it. And then when we do pay attention, we pay attention for such a short period of time that it's hard to get any sort of meaningful change. Like going back to what Fargo did with their public comments. Will anybody remember that when it comes time to vote?
Yeah. Well,
probably not. But do you think that healthcare is the thing that grabs the attention that says my mom and dad, my grandma and my grandpa all died because healthcare wasn't available to them in the richest nation on the planet?
Yeah. Well, I think it's. Let me answer the healthcare part first because I think it could be. I mean, it's so completely unsustainable. If you and I are recording this on Friday the 14th, so we have there's an episode of my podcast, Plain Talk, that's up, wherein longtime North Dakota Republican political operative Pat Finken and I both come to the conclusion that we may not have a choice but to go to single-payer healthcare. And I'll tell you, that gives me the hives for all sorts of reasons, but I don't know another way. Health savings accounts aren't going to fix the problem. I mean, you want to look at Americans who are maybe getting a 2 or 3% raise every year. Most of that, if not all of it, gets gobbled up by interest. And then on top of that, your health insurance premium goes up. And it's not your employer's fault, because if you look at your employer's side of the health insurance premium, theirs is going up too. It's hurting businesses. It's hurting citizens. At the end of the year, unless Congress acts, and who knows if they're going to act or not, I have no idea what their competency level is anymore. But if they don't act, the people on the individual insurance marketplace, which is North Dakota's farmers and ranchers and entrepreneurs, they are going to see a dramatic increase on this. North Dakota Insurance Commissioner John Godfrey has been on our podcast several times this year, sounding the alarms about this, saying you may not like it and we can't afford it, but the simple fact of the matter is if you don't renew those subsidies, people are going to be devastated by these premium increases. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're at a tipping point, when it comes to healthcare. Or you think about how many Americans, including myself, who are terrified to go to the doctor because you don't know when the bill's going to end. What will the bill be? They're going to order some tests and I got to do something. And next thing I know, $3,000 later, I mean, it's a terrible situation. So yeah, I mean, could that be the tipping point? I think it could be.
I just wonder what it is that grabs our attention anymore. I think if we shut off the internet, and by the way, you can do that. I mean, I know you know that, but I mean, you can just turn off the internet. Now that'd be bad for both of us. So again, there's too much commerce and too much commerce and too much dollars tied to it where they would never do that. But I just don't know what it is. I mean, we've been living in a deficit. We've been living in negative dollars for so long. It just seems like we're not concerned necessarily. You'll hear politicians from time to time say, "Oh, I'm worried about it," and then nothing really ever seems to happen. So I don't think it's that. But what I think
it's because Americans don't want it to happen, though. I mean, not really. We like to talk about it, as an intellectual exercise, like, $38 trillion in debt. That's sure bad. $2 trillion budget deficit this year. That's sure bad. But then when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, well then what are we going to cut? Or whose taxes are we going to increase? Because we need to do both. We can't tax our way to solvency and we can't cut our way to solvency. We're going to have to do both. We need smaller government and higher taxes. That's the only way we're going to map this out. It's just arithmetic. It's not ideology. But there's no political will out there because the voters don't really want it. And the politicians are in the business of getting reelected. And so they're not going to do something that's going to put getting reelected in. So until the voters want it to change. And even your comment about, turning off the internet. I mean, yeah, that's healthy, all things in moderation. But people who had better priorities would do productive things on the internet. The internet's just a medium. It's just and all its related apps and platforms and services is just a medium. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, underneath it all, whether it's the politics or the internet or whatever, it's people. Mm-hmm. And we have some deep-seated, serious cultural problems in this country right now. We have the wrong priorities, and we seem to think that we don't have to make responsible budget decisions or policy decisions. We can just sally forth and do whatever we want and indulge. And the only thing that really matters is the next election.
Well, and I think that's absolutely true. Which leads me to: are you a term limits guy?
I am not. And then maybe that surprises after that Eeyore-ish diatribe I just went on. Maybe that surprises people because, again, I think the term limits is treating the symptom, and it's not the problem. Like Americans could implement term limits whenever they wanted. They could just stop voting for the incumbents. I'm not really in favor, though, of anything that limits what voters can choose on the ballot. If they really like somebody who's been doing a really great job. I'm a big fan of Senator John Hoeven. I think generally he does a pretty good job. I think he gets things done for North Dakota. If North Dakotans want to keep sending him to the United States Senate over and over again, that's their choice. And if they get sick of him and want to send somebody else, the process is waiting for that challenger who can certainly get in and compete if they want to. So I don't think the problem is that voters aren't, it just seems so arrogant to me. And it's weird, too, that it comes from sort of a populist place. Like, oh, we the people have to take back power, so we have to pass a law that restricts who we can vote for. Take some responsibility for yourself. If you don't like the people who are in power, beat them. I'm not a term limits guy at all. Particularly in the state, like the state level term limits are really, which I don't think the average North Dakota voter understood that they were voting for term limits for the legislature, not Congress. And, in the legislature, some of these rural districts, Jarrod, the talent pool's pretty thin as it stands. And now we're going to be turning it over, every 8 years. And really, if you look at the numbers in North Dakota, we were turning over the legislature at a pretty brisk clip. I mean, there were certainly some outliers, obviously Ray Holmberg, yeah, I don't want to talk about Ray Holmberg, but I mean, he was in office for forever. There's a few others in the legislature that have been in office for forever. But I mean, they're the exception. The voters in North Dakota turn over the legislature pretty frequently. We didn't need term limits, but we got them now. But I don't think they're going to fix anything that the people who promote them say it is.
Okay, so I don't want to talk about Ray Holmberg either, but I do want to ask you this.
Yeah.
And I hope you'll indulge me. I've been wanting to ask you this for a long time.
Sure.
What do you think happened with Wayne Stenchum's emails?
Yeah, I wish I knew. And one of the things that bothers me about this is there has been really a lot of irresponsible commentary and reporting about this from, some in the local media where they're just off to the races. I don't want to suppose. I don't know what's behind the mystery door. I don't know the only person who can tell us. But we know some of Liz Brocker, Wayne Stenchum's assistant. We know some of what her motivation was because she wrote it in an email ordering those emails to be deleted. And not just of Wayne Stenchum, but also of his deputy, Troy Seibel. She wrote in an email to delete them before somebody in the public could request them. I was also, excuse me.
Take your time, man.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
I also had a story where I put in a request for, the employees that go in and out of the state capitol have a little, I don't know if it's an RFD, like a little card reader thing. And so their entries and exits from the capitol are logged. And those are an open record. And I was able to get a hold of them. And what we found is like immediately, like Wayne Stenjum, if I'm remembering the timeline right, died on like a Friday. That Monday, somebody from the North Dakota Historical Society went to his office to get an artifact or something, for the archives for the museum, because this is a guy who, with a decades-long history of serving in public service in North Dakota. They went to the office, and his office was already completely bare bones cleaned out. He died on a Friday, and then by Monday, and they were in the office late that night. I mean, I don't know. I want to believe that it was just innocuous, that there was no ill intent, that there was nothing in those emails that were terrible. But I can't say that for sure because the emails are gone. They're gone. And what a terrible thing. If Wayne Stenjum really had done nothing wrong, what a grave disservice that's been done to him now, because we've created this blank spot that none of us are ever really going to know about. It was remarkable to me. I was actually I think it was me, our Capitol reporter at the time, Jeremy Turley, and I think maybe one other person had filed an open records request for those emails. And when Attorney General Drew Wrigley came back and said, we can't give you the emails because they've all been deleted, that was a shock. I mean, that was a nuclear bomb. I couldn't believe it, Jarrod, when I had been told that. And obviously, I mean, that story drug on for more than a year. I mean, what a terrible thing. And undermining the public's trust in government. And not unreasonably. I mean, if they can do that, it was a terrible, terrible thing. What was in the emails, I don't want to speculate. I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish we could know. And I think it's enough that it's terrible that we're never going to be able to find out. Not really.
Do you think, I suppose, I was going to ask if you think anybody should be punished, but what do you punish them for?
I thought that Liz Brocker should be prosecuted. There is a statute. I think it's a Class A misdemeanor, and then given some circumstances, it can rise to a felony, where if you are a custodian of a record and you order it to be destroyed to keep it from the public's view, you could be prosecuted under that statute. Now, the problem there is that the statute poses a question of intent. You have to destroy it to keep it out of the public's view. We don't have a retention policy for emails in North Dakota government. We probably should. Like in the Century Code, like we have to maintain emails for 7 years or something like that. We don't have that. So unless you can prove intent, you can't really prosecute somebody under that because maybe they're just cleaning out the emails or something. But in this instance, we had an email from Liz Brocker who specifically said, again, delete the emails before somebody can make an open records request. What is that if not destroying a public record to keep the public from accessing it? I thought they should have gone ahead with criminal charges. They did not.
Question that came about for me was, Liz, I'm going to say obviously you might disagree with that part, obviously knew enough, or there had been a conversation between her and Wayne to say, hey, look, I think he was 66 when he passed. I'm not getting any younger. If something should happen to me while in office, the very first thing I need you to do is delete those emails. If she went rogue on that, why she hasn't faced any sort of justice at this point is a little bit beyond me. We should at least get to know, well, why did you order them deleted? Just because Wayne kept everything, and that's kind of what.
Well, and again, I don't want to speculate. I don't know if they had an arrangement, and you're right, and I'm not saying you are. I think what it demonstrates is that we need in state law a standard for how we handle this. How do we handle emails, and how do we handle emails if somebody passes away? His official emails are part of public's record. They belong to the public. They were created on public systems as a result of his public service, and they belong to us, and we should be able to read them if we want to, and we can't, and we need hard written into law a retention policy that describes how long we keep these emails, under what conditions they can be disposed, and just make it clear. And then if somebody doesn't follow that law, then it's clear cut. But right now, it's very subjective, very loosey-goosey, and it's got to be better than this.
The final thing for me on this, too, is you would think, too, that the Attorney General is working on things at the time of his passing, and then to gut his email would mean that there'd be a gap in whatever business he was working on that was ongoing. Most of us use email as kind of official correspondence between different entities. So I'm surprised, and maybe it did, and we're just not aware of it, create certain gaps between work that he was on that was ongoing that just didn't get done or had to stop because of his passing.
You know, I talked to people in the office, and I've talked to Attorney General Drew Wrigley about that, and he, I mean, and Wrigley, I mean, certainly not in the position to necessarily, I mean, he's the one that kind of divulged that all this went through. I think Wrigley's been about as transparent as he can be. Probably the one big disagreement I've had with him is about, you know, legal consequences for deleting the emails, but. He said that it didn't really create any blips, and I think it's because so much of the Attorney General's office, they're dealing in legal matters, and so a lot of it was hard copies, and also on the other side of it, I mean, every email he sent, if it's official business and it went to another state account, those emails still exist in those accounts. You know, it would be any emails or communications that went outside, and increasingly, I mean, our public officials are going to get savvy to this. There's so many ways to communicate in ways that, you know, Signal and a lot of these apps that just, they delete them, they're encrypted, they're whatever. You know, it takes a really dumb policy. I mean, they're going to do something. And that's what kind of makes me think that maybe there was nothing all that. And we did get a lot of emails. Remember, the BCI did go back through. We at the forum put a team together to review all those emails. We didn't really find anything all that exciting. And that's kind of like, if you're really up to something nefarious, why would you put it in your official email when you could just as easily send it through one of these other messaging apps? I mean, if you were going to find something really evil in there, I don't think it would be in the emails anyway. But again, I'm not. That's not me making an excuse for what happened at all. I'm just saying that's kind of the reality of the world we're living in.
You know, I had I serve on a board here in town, and what I found was interesting right out of the gate was there was an email discussion going on, and I sent an email. I think it was to the city attorney. And he responded with a phone call. You know, so that's another way. I mean, Could you say, did you know, Dan Gostad call Jarrod Spoor? Yeah, he did. You know, yeah. But what'd you guys talk about? Yeah, I don't recall. Right. I mean, so you could, you'd have to be a pretty savvy investigator to catch up on all of that. It wasn't anything nefarious. It just, for whatever reason, the city attorney that particular day told me that he was in transit and he wanted to address the issue, and so he called me as opposed to.
And I do that. I mean, that's a natural thing. Sometimes I get a text, and it's like, you know, my response to this is more complicated and nuanced than a text.
Yes,
I'm going to be able to accomplish over a text. So I'll
so
give him a call or something.
Yeah, sometimes you get a call and sometimes you get. But again, you're right about that. So just a couple more things for you, Rob.
Sure.
And then I'll let you get out of here.
I could do this all day, Jarrod.
Oh, this is. And I'll invite you back, I promise, because there's a lot of ground yet that I want to get covered. Major League Baseball, of all things. Talk about left. So it dawned on me the other night as our very beloved right fielder Aaron Judge wins another MVP award, and as he should,
rightfully so.
Cal Raleigh, Cal Raleigh, flash in the pan guy. Do it for a while, and then maybe.
Yeah, well, Cal Raleigh had an unbelievable season.
He did.
But if you look at, I mean, overall, Aaron Judge is the best all-around baseball player in the American League right now. There's just no question about it.
So the question I have for you, though, and I already know the knee-jerk to this is going to be the pretty obvious answer. But why does Major League Baseball name 2 MVPs? I mean, I know why.
Yeah. Well, I think the question more is should they continue to name 2 MVPs?
Perhaps better phrased.
And because the reason why they still do it is because it used to be that the American League and the National League were almost entirely separate. I mean, the teams, unless they met in the World Series, they didn't play each other.
Right.
And so you had two completely different leagues. It's not really like that anymore. Every team plays every other team. So it's just not, it's one league now. And so really, and there's not even any difference. You know, they all use the designated hitter now, so they're all playing under the same rules. So it's an anachronism from a different age. But baseball loves its anachronisms. We love our history. It's a very conservative sport. We don't like change that much. Although I will say, the league has generally been on a pretty good run with a lot of these rule changes. I mean, the pitch clock has worked out great. I think the three batter rule for pitchers coming in, I think, has been great. I think getting away from some of the extreme shifting and stuff like that, I think was pretty good. Making the bases larger. I'm curious on pitching appeals. My co-host Chad Oban, who's also a baseball nut, was just down in Arizona and was able to catch a couple of games of the Arizona Fall League. and they've been doing the pitching appeals down there. He says it works great. It's very fast. So the baseball's been on a pretty good run, and the sport's in a good place right now. I am worried about this gambling stuff, though. That's a little scary. My goodness.
I mean, I hope that's just end of the herd stuff, right?
I hope so.
I mean, you had a closer in Cleveland, Classe, I believe is how you say his name, who
Emmanuel Classe.
yeah, was in line for tens of millions of dollars.
That dude's making, well, he was already making, he was on like, I think a $20 or $25 million contract. He's making $4 or $5 million a year. And for $14,000, which don't get me wrong, so I mean, a lot of money unless you're making $4 million a year. Put it all in at risk. You know, I mean, if he's convicted of this, the Cleveland Guardians can get out of that contract. They don't have to pay him that.
And they will.
You know, if he, you know, and they will. And I think he's going to be convicted. I mean, you see the evidence against it where,
sure.
I mean, they were texting, the guy was visiting his house. I mean, come on. And what a terrible thing. I will tell you that I am a libertarian. I don't have like any moral objections or anything to gambling, but the degree to which it's sort of infiltrating sports and everything now, I am very worried about what that's going to do.
I'm not I don't
gamble because I can do math. There's a reason why casinos have so much money and everything, and it's not because people are going in there winning a lot of money. If I'm gonna spend my money, I'm gonna get something for the return, right? Like I want to get concert tickets, I want to eat a nice meal, something like that. Sitting at a slot machine, you know, some of the skills-based games like blackjack or poker, like okay, I get it. Like there's some skill involved here. You want to spend your money, you enjoy that game. I get it. It's not really any different than people spending money to buy a video game or a board game or something. So I get it. But what people, these e-tab machines just sitting in front, just feeding money into the stupid thing, and it's just the computer does like a math calculation, decides if you win or not.
Half the time you don't even know if you won until you look at the credits and go, oh, well, I guess that was
What are we doing?
What
are we doing, Jarrod? I don't get it.
I'm with you on the rule changes. I could do without the Ghost Runner thing in extra innings.
That's weird. Yeah. I don't like that one so much.
I don't dig it. I don't like that one. But I'm with you on the other ones. I just thought it was interesting as we're naming MVPs again for another year. And like I said, I was with you on the, you know, on the reason why. I mean, I get that part. But I think it's time that Major League Baseball, and I also would like to see, I miss, and this is just me being nostalgic maybe, I miss the old Greg Maddux, 323 innings a year, 22-5, 3.18 ERA. We're so specialized even in Major League Baseball that if you can get a guy past 100 pitches, he better be throwing a no-hitter or he better be in the eighth inning of a shutout. And if those things are true, he may get a chance to do it.
I think some of the things they've been doing is try to address that. I mean, I think the 3-batter rule was to try to get that lefty only guy out of the who comes in and throws to one batter. Right. I mean, I can remember really we call on a reliever, we go to the commercial break, they do their warm ups, and then the lefty on lefty guy throws one pitch and he grounds out, and then it's back to the commercial break. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the entertainment business.
Right.
Baseball has to be entertaining. That was not entertaining to watch that. I mean, it wins games. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes, like, it's that weird thing where sometimes, like, the best way to win games is not necessarily the best product on the field for the fans. And if you're not putting the best product on the field for the fans, what are you doing?
This is going to be another sharp right-hand turn. What do you think's in the Epstein files?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like the Stenjum emails thing, right? I mean, I don't know. I think we should get to see them and decide for ourselves what's in them. I mean, I'm beyond the point of trusting Pam Bondi or anyone else to put them out there. I know one of the popular talking points right now is, there's damaging stuff in there for Trump. Why didn't they release them during the Biden administration? And I'm pretty sure that's because during the Biden administration, they were tied up in prosecution. They weren't something that could be released because they were being used in criminal cases. First against Jeffrey Epstein. He ultimately killed himself, I guess. And then I always forget how to pronounce her, but Maxwell.
Yeah.
Ghislaine, I think that's her first name. I don't think they became available. But at the end of the day, I mean, whether there's bad stuff for Trump in there or good stuff for Trump in there, how about we restore some public trust and let the public see him? Maybe it'll be a nothing burger. Maybe there's nothing in there about Trump. I don't know. Although I will tell you, I mean, these emails, some of the things, with Epstein, I don't think there's any question that Donald Trump knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a creep with women and was okay with it. I mean, Donald Trump is a creep with women, and he's okay with that. So I just, I figure that's probably it. I think I would be probably pretty surprised if it was more than that. But who knows? I mean, Trump was found liable in a civil court of law of sexually assaulting a woman. I mean, you look at his past behavior, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. But here, whatever you think's in there or what don't think's in there, how about we put it so that Rob and Jarrod don't have to play the guess what's behind door 3 game and just let us see the damn files.
So when you look at the landscape of politics in the state of North Dakota, what potential headwinds do you see coming?
Politically, or politically, I mean, the North Dakota Republican Party is at war with itself right now. Probably by the time your listeners can hear this, I'll have a column up about the chair of the North Dakota Republican Party complaining at their most recent meeting about people leaking me things about their financial data. But I mean, the party itself is not raising any money. Now, that doesn't mean that Republicans are going to do badly in the coming election, because our elected offices in North Dakota are chock full of incumbent Republicans who have strong name recognition, strong fundraising networks, who don't really need the political party to do much of anything for them. But I wonder, long term, what that's going to do for candidate recruitment, their ability to replace some of those traditional Republican conservatives who I think were contributed so much to this 3-decade-long run that Republicans have had in office. The people that run this North Dakota party now, they're not pragmatic. They're not coalition builders. It's you're either with us or against us for them. And that's just not how Republicans in North Dakota became successful. Frankly, they became successful by stealing Democratic ideas sometimes when those ideas made sense for the state. So I think politically those are the headwinds right now. But Kelly Armstrong, I mean, he doesn't have. I remember when the new chair, Matthew Simon of the North Dakota Republican Party, was elected chair. At that same meeting, the first thing they do is they issued 2 censures for Armstrong. They censured him for his property tax plan. They censured him for his veto of a what I call as a book. I know they don't like it, but I don't care. The book ban bill. And I called the governor to get his response to it. And his response was, I don't care. And it floored me, but he was right. And clearly the voters don't care either, because not that long ago, the North Dakota News Cooperative surveyed the public on approval numbers for some of our statewide officials. And Kelly Armstrong was the most popular statewide elected official surveyed. He was a few points ahead of Donald Trump, as popular as Donald Trump is here. So, the idea that the party is going to censure their very popular, recently elected governor, who just got almost 70% on the statewide ballot, and now you're going to censure him because you're a district chair or you're a party chair that got elected in a smoky room with 15 votes, is absurd. So that's something that I'm really, and it's been a storyline for a few cycles now, but that's interesting. I don't expect Democrats to pick themselves off the map here in the state anytime soon. But that may be coming. I mean, if we see a serious crack up on healthcare or something, all bets are off. And the Trump era has been so weird. I mean, if anything could sort of shift North Dakota's political winds maybe back to when, people like Heidi Heitkamp or people like Kent Conrad, Byron Dorgan, George Sinner could win on the statewide ballot, it's the Trump era. But I think it's going to take some real pain, I think, to change how people vote.
Are you aware, do the Dems have, is there a superstar out there that we're unaware of, that you maybe got your good eye on, that you're like, that guy or girl could really make some waves in North Dakota politics?
Somebody I always think about is Max Schneider, who knew well for his years of service in Grand Forks. He kind of went out of politics, served as U.S. attorney. Guy's a straight shooter. I think the problem is I think Democrats, it's not a talent question, I think, for the Democrats, because I think they have good candidates. And in politics, you can make a star pretty easily, right? If somebody just gets the right message and they galvanize the public, it doesn't matter what their name recognition was before. Right. If they've got the wind at their backs now, they can win. So really, I think it's not so much a question of waiting for the Democrats to have talent. I think it's waiting for something to change in the state. And the thing is, and I'm not rooting for that either. And I'm not rooting for Democrats necessarily to win. I generally like the Republican leadership in North Dakota. I think for the most part they do a good job. I like Kelly or Governor Armstrong a lot. I think he's a good leader for our state. He's really impressed me during the shutdown with his initiatives, and now he's putting the new initiative announced today about homelessness. I mean, this is a guy, he seems to be really trying to take care of North Dakotans. I'm impressed by that. So I think generally because Republicans have been doing a good job, and North Dakotans feel that, where things pretty prosperous and pretty safe, and people keep voting for them and keep reelecting them. I don't see that changing in North Dakota anytime soon.
How do you think Kevin Cramer's doing?
I think Kevin Cramer is a unique duck in North Dakota politics, because on one hand, I think he gets this reputation of being this political brawler, and it's all partisanship and kind of bomb throwing. And a lot of times people either fall into one camp or the other. Either they're like a boring policy person, or they're sort of the firebrand, and they're just out there on cable news and stuff all the time. Kramer's a hybrid of those two things, where he can do both. I think some of it has to do with his service on the Public Service Commission. That's why I have really high hopes for Julie Fedorchak, is you have to be a very smart person to serve on the Public Service Commission. Kevin Cramer has an almost encyclopedic knowledge about public policy. I remember one time I had him on the radio, and we were doing like an open phones thing where people could call in and ask him questions. And a lot of times what happens with those is somebody calls in and asks about like an obscure policy, and maybe the politician, through no fault of their own, just they're not up to date on that. And so they'll say, I'll have my staff call. Some guy called in, and it was about some obscure trucking regulation. And I was fully ready, like I was going to have the producer take their email off, the senator would have his staff email them about it or something. Oh no, Kevin Cramer was like, oh yeah, we had a hearing about that 6 months ago and blah, 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 blah. Just amazing. So he's that guy. I think he's very, very good. My one problem with Kevin Cramer, I think, is just the Trump loyalty, where he's just, it really drives me nuts. He's somebody who I know his Christian faith is very important to me, or important to him, I should say. And he's, I think he's genuine about it. And to watch him and a lot of other Republicans just sort of set that aside for someone like Donald Trump. I mean, I think it was politically very astute of Kevin Cramer to hitch his wagon to Donald Trump early on. Kevin obviously knew which way the winds were blowing. I trust Kevin Cramer's political instincts more than just about any. He's almost a bellwether. I mean, you want to watch where things are heading, watch what Kevin Cramer's doing, because the guy's got his finger on the pulse. The man knows what he's doing. I think sometimes, though, there's a time at which, even though it's not politically convenient, you stand up for the right thing. And that's what's disappointed me about Kevin Cramer and a lot of Republicans in the Trump era, is Trump is not a conservative. He's not a good person. And you just stopped caring about those things that we said we cared about for so long.
Rob, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time, sir.
It was a blast.
Oh, this has been great. And I hope I'll get you on actually probably really soon here, especially as we're heading into a political year. I will do my level best to get on your calendar. And we, of course, I was just very impressed by the workload. I mean, there's quite a bit of content, as the kids say, that you're producing these days. That is, I was left wondering, when do you sleep? Because you don't have the luxury of just writing whimsical things where you can just get close on the facts. If you're going to put a fact in a story or a column, you have to make sure that it's 1,000% correct. And I'm guessing you don't have a team of 9 that are working with you over there either.
No, it's just me. I mean, I do have a producer for the podcast and my co-hosts, so that helps. But no, it's just me. And I take calls from politicians when I'm at my kids' sporting games or in the middle of dinner, late at night, early in the morning. I am a lifelong insomniac / early riser. So I send emails at 1:00 in the morning, and I'll reply to emails at 5:00 in the morning. And I don't know. It's just the way I am. I don't sleep a lot. But I love it. I mean, part of it is it's just, I love the work, and it becomes easy. I think when you just immerse yourself in it all the time. So I don't know. I don't think I'm anything special, but I'm so lucky to get to do this. And I do work, at times you can be glib, when you're a pundit and kind of sarcastic or whatever. Well, one thing I take really seriously is trying to serve the public, like trying to make sure that what I am adding is meaningful and insightful and makes sense and is factual and is not just bomb throwing or clickbait or whatever. I don't mind being provocative if it's for the right reasons. I don't have a lot of patience for people who are just doing it to be entertaining. So, that's my approach for better or worse, and seems to be going okay for me. So,
as a former talk show host, my final thing is, do you ever think you'll write a book?
Boy, people ask me that question all the time. Like once a week, people ask me, like, when are you going to write a book? And I don't know. I love just the craft of writing to begin with. I like words. I read about a book a week just for fun, just because I love literature and I love reading. And
yeah, but if you could dumb it down a little bit for me, because sometimes you use a word in your column and I got to go look at what the word means.
Yeah, I know. I get that flack sometimes, and I'll tell you, because I love words so much, but it's a fine line not to look like a pretentious a-hole sometimes. I have to be careful about some of it. And not do that.
Pasting, and I'm Google. Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well,
that is the nice thing about the internet, though, is you can look those words up right away. And the English language has so many wonderful words. Why only use some of them? I don't know. I don't know if I wrote a book. I don't know. I've never worked in that medium. I mean, I have a hard time when I have to write print columns. I'm so used to the immediacy of like write the column, publish the column, internet style, right? I mean, came up as a blogger. I struggle with print columns that are going to run 2 days after I write them. I can't imagine writing a book that wouldn't be published for like months or a year or something later like that. I don't know.
What do you think you'd write about? Have you given that any thought?
Thought so. I've kicked around ideas for like a fiction novel sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Don't ask. I'm not sharing any of them because they're probably.
I got you. I hear you.
They're all dumb as hell. I'm convinced of it. So, but I mean, they're cool to me. Like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I wrote about this? And it's like it's a stupid thing. I'll share one. The other day, a shower thought. Because my producer asked me, he's like, Rob, you should write a fiction book. So I was thinking, well, what could I write one about? It's like, I wanted to write like something that was almost like a Jonathan Swift type satire of our current political moment and all the stupid things that people get convinced to do because they see them on the internet. The challenges or get vaccinated. I mean, just stupid stuff that's out there. And so I thought, what if you wrote something about like this influencer who starts convincing people not to brush their teeth? And like, just like, don't brush your teeth. It's big fluoride and they're just out to get you and all this stuff and like satirizing it. Now, maybe that would be funny. Maybe you could have a lot of fun with that. But like, I thought about it, like I wrote it down, like I started doing an outline and then it was like, no, that might be stupid. Like I get flustered by it. Like, oh, people are going to make fun of me if I write that. So I don't know. I do think about these things though.
You could adopt a ghostwriter type name.
And just write it under a different.
Yeah, it could be. It could be Pablo Rort, and then we would never know that it was really you, right? You mean?
Yeah,
you could
self-publish on Amazon or something.
Yeah, just some sort of obscure works, and then wait for somebody to trip over it and find it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I tell you, one day if all of a sudden you're like, boy, Port seems like he's independently wealthy now. What happened? It's like, well, my secret Bigfoot erotica has been selling very well on Amazon. So,
Rob,
that's a by the way, that a Bigfoot erotica. That's a Jonah Goldberg, trope. I did not come up with that myself, but yeah, I just because wasn't there's like a Trump administration guy that like got like somebody found he'd been writing like erotica or something on the side like that's. Whew. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could do that. I don't have that much of an imagination. I don't know if I could. I don't think I'd play well in that game.
And then there's the time factor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you write for work and you write for pleasure and you write. I mean, at some point you gotta put the pen or the keyboard or whatever down and actually, I suppose.
I don't write much with a pen. My handwriting is terrible. So.
Yeah, mine isn't great either. But here we are, a couple of old men that don't make checks anymore either. So there's that.
There you go.
Rob, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And again, I'll be in touch. This will drop next Tuesday, and you and I will hopefully. I'll send you the link if you care to share it. Great. If not, that's not the point of. That's
no,
not
I absolutely will.
Not the point of any of this, by the way. It's just I'll send it to you so you can see it and see the final product and see what came out of it, so that you're aware of it, of what the final product looked like. So again, thank you, sir. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jarrod.
Go Yanks.